Hello, welcome to Fintech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, we have Zachary Dan, co-founder and CTO of Act Analytics. Act Analytics is a platform for better understanding the environmental, social, and governance impacts or records of the companies you invest in and helping advisors make better decisions around those factors. And with that, here's my interview with Zachary.
Hello, Zach.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for your time as well. I appreciate being invited to your show.
So, Zachary Dan of Act Analytics, tell us about Act Analytics.
Sure. So, Act Analytics is an ESG analytics company that builds tools for financial professionals.
Excellent. That's very. I love it when people are very concise in what they do, and I think that's a perfectly concise description.
Yeah.
All right. So, essentially, let's talk about the history of this now. So, what led you to create Act Analytics?
Sure. So, I was motivated by the ESG landscape. Now, 2 years ago, when I started this, I realized there's a lot of data out there in the world for ESG, and there's companies who are taking this data and turning it into ratings, and neither of those two things serve most people because the data is very difficult for most to deal with, and the ratings are difficult to understand. You don't really get to see what's going on, how it's constructed. It's a bit of a black box. So I thought the way that I can contribute to the ecosystem is by creating tools that allow people to construct ESG portfolios and do analytics in a way that both gives the richness of the raw data, but also the ease of use of a score as well.
Okay, so let me jump in here and provide a little background on these challenges that you addressed here. And I mean, I've got a lot of experience in dealing with ESG suppliers for well over 10 years now. There's a couple of issues in this space. I'd say first and foremost, it's really hard to delegate your ethics or your sense of social responsibility. And what you consider ethical may not be ethical in someone else's eyes. Then it comes down to also how companies construct these portfolios. Like, what are the criteria for deeming someone to be ESG positive, so environmental, social governance, or the other one, SRI, social responsible investing, is what the other category, but ESG is more the kind of terminology that everybody uses now. What basically constitutes a company that passes that? So there's a couple of things we can do. There's negative screens, which say that if you're in this sector of the economy or you're involved in these environments, you're out of the realm of opportunities. We're not going to look at that. So it's a very binary situation. You're in or out. And then there's the ESG, and then there's positive screens, which if you're doing this, it's kind of a plus for you. We're definitely going to consider it. And then the last piece is kind of the scorecard, right? And this is where we talked about the scorecard essentially spits out a number or a score that says this company is environmentally responsible, whatever it is. And typically what I've seen is they get graded upon a number of criteria. So environmental, social governance. And that leads to some weird results. It leads to some weird results that many people would think are weird. So things like, for example, companies in the oil sands making it into an ESG portfolio. Now, you hear that and you think, well, what about the environmental impact? Well, the environmental impact might be bad, and they might be one of the better candidates in a bad sector. But if they're doing really well on social and governance, their score goes up. And this is one of the big criticisms of this entire space, is that these scorecards are gameable to some degree, right? You need so many people and so many women in senior leadership that are present. Great, we'll just promote a bunch of people, right? As opposed to actually making it a core process of what it is, how you run your business. So tell me how you kind of help solve for this gaming of the scoring system.
Okay, there's a lot of good points in there. So I should start by mentioning Act Analytics is the only company I've come across and built that allows you to change the weightings of each of these different categories in a rating system. So you can screen industries in and out, and you can also decide, say, hey, I think that these particular factors or groupings of factors, say environmental or social, are more or less important. And you can do that. You can choose the way that companies are benchmarked as well. If you'd like a global view comparing all companies to all other companies, or in your example, how you said, well, some raters compare oil and gas companies to other oil and gas companies. So it really depends on how people want to conceptualize ESG through like a global leadership lens or through a best in breed lens, and both of them have their uses in the world. You can, if companies in all sectors are being pressured to change over time and everybody's doing this, then that is one way to change the world. That might not sit right for some people who say, look, I just don't want to own oil and gas at all, even if it's applying some incremental pressure to that industry. I think it's just wrong and I don't want to own it. And that's totally fine. I think that one of the mistakes of what's out there is this idea that you can become the standard scoring methodology for ESG, because like you pointed out, it's just different for everybody. And I think it's a mistake. I think it's kind of primarily driven by a desire for branding rather than a desire to actually give people a good methodology to work with. So just so I'm not losing my message in there, we allow people to customize how they want different parts of ESG to contribute to how companies are being scored, how they want to construct their rating system.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, well, we're going to dive into that. I just want to touch upon some of the things you said there that I think are valuable and need some elaboration. Simple examples like if your sense of what's important to you is very individualistic, right? So I'll say, for example, like I know people in particular who actually work in the space who basically very much are not anti-fossil fuel free, but not anti-nuclear, right? And that can be seen as, depending on your opinion there, I mean, nuclear is either the solution to energy capacity issues with fossil fuel free or another danger that we just don't want to take on, right? So that's your opinion, right? And there are a lot of ESG providers that screen out for nuclear and other ones that don't, right? So again, a lot of what exists in the marketplace is designed and packaged based on a certain set of criteria and sits on a shelf. And that what's out there in the marketplace, and that's what I tell all clients when we talk about this, is we don't know what's important to you because what's important to you might not be available in the marketplace. So if that's not the case, you have to figure out how to compensate for that. And what you're saying is your tool allows people to take greater granularity in translating, or what you're saying is that your tool allows them to take their kind of belief structure, get granular about it, and overlay that belief structure onto an analytics platform that spits out a portfolio that matches their unique their unique view of the ESG universe. That sound about right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
You can record that, put that in packaging, and use it going forward.
Yeah, I'll have to transcribe that and put in.
Good.
Yeah, and it was what's challenging is making that easy for people, which is making it easy to, as a user experience, to have that level of customization. That's, I think, really one of the part of the magic of the tool is that huge level of customization and granularity and visibility without making things difficult for people. That's really the core of our goal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's you have what I'll call the density issue, right? Like there's a lot of content, a lot of decision making that can go into this decision, and you have to solve for a UI experience that doesn't overwhelm people, right? So you have to provide enough simplicity without losing without losing the information, that it becomes actionable but still purposeful, right? So difficult challenge. So let's walk through that experience. So tell me about how the tool gets used by the end user. What's the experience look like start to finish?
Sure. Okay. So the first thing that you see when you enter the platform is a list of clients that you can select. You can select each client and go into a client workspace. That's where you can choose clients' particular ESG weightings, as like what components of ESG does this client care more or less about, and how much should each of those things contribute to the rating. When that rating is constructed, that's saved to the client and is persistent to that client. So if I come back later, then that scoring system that you've constructed with your client through by talking to them, figuring out what they care about, is going to be the same. Then you can upload their accounts. We have a number of integrations. TD Veo Black Diamond, and a few more on the way that I can say we're almost ready to go with Riskalyze and a few others. So you can synchronize their accounts, a client's accounts in the platform, and then get an overall scorecard and report on their holdings. And you can dig into their holdings, generate single company reports that are going to be tailored to the metrics that you define for the client. You can also search for new companies that the system will recommend based on your client's ESG profile. And you can also search for new funds as well. That's a high level overview of what it does.
Cool. So end of the day, I am applying these screens. I'm basically applying what's important to me, and it's coming out with not just here's what you should be buying, but here's the composition. What happens on an ongoing basis? Like, is this constantly being checked as new data comes in, and how does that work?
So the data is updated about once every 2 weeks, and most of it is based off of corporate reports. So it is updated ongoing, and you will see if there are big changes in your portfolio.
Excellent. So that said, where is this? You say corporate reports. So tell me about all the different flows of data you have that are coming into here.
Sure. So the primary source of data, the raw data, comes in from Refinitiv, and that is then run through our scoring methodology and algorithms to produce our various levels of scores. And so that information comes out of corporate reports, corporate sustainability reports, and other various public sources.
Excellent. So bottom line, that includes things like looking for any kind of, say, media headline risk. So, for example, no one wants to hear about a company doing something terrible in a country, or human rights violation, bribery scandal, whatever it is, and then go and the next month be like, oh, I not only did I own that when this happened, but I still own it. What is going on? So, I think you're scanning for those types of headline risks?
Yeah. So that's another project that's in an open beta. So that's a news analytics tool that we're just about to launch and take out of beta, and it's designed really to compete with a company called True Value Labs. It's the idea is you go out, you find sentiment signals in the news that have an ESG topic associated with it and a company associated with it, and you create a time series signal. And so this is going to make our analytics more real time and be able to alert you to these kinds of events. So that's working standalone right now, but it's not currently integrated into the main UI.
Well, it might be by the time we finish, by the time this airs, so we'll see. So excellent. I mean, I want to say a couple of things. First off, your timing is interesting because we are going through a massive boom in ESG investing. It's been an enormous boom I've been talking about for years on the institutional side, but only recently has the retail side really been paying a lot of close attention to it. And the numbers are growing substantially, and finally every advisor's got to kind of be forced to look at it, thankfully. Again, that's mainly with prepackaged product. What you're talking about now is going well beyond that. What's the feedback been from the earliest users you've had on this?
The feedback is, well, we recently redesigned the UI, which was very quant focused originally. So I have a quantitative background, and essentially I first built the tool for myself. What would I do if I was going to build a ESG portfolio and then need to report on it? So I wasn't as focused on creating a workspace for a financial professional to categorize and organize different people into different buckets and profiles. So that needed to change. We have about 20 paying clients at the moment. And these are people who log in almost every day. So they really like it, but we knew that we had to take our user experience to the next level. The news analytics has been very, very well received recently. I think a lot of people like the real-time aspect of it, and they like to be able to click and see the articles that are creating signals. and it's a bit more simple of a tool to understand. It takes a bit of time you really need to understand the methodology of the main UI to get the most out of it, and we've needed to work on the UI to improve that experience, and we're just about to relaunch it actually.
Interesting. I mean, frankly, I think the reality is that if you are an advisor who wants to build customized portfolios around this sort of thing that are more specifically centered around the client's actual values and down to the individual client, I mean, like there's not, you're pretty much without other options at this point. So I think you're well positioned there.
There's nothing else really that can do it.
No, there's nothing. And I mean, like, congratulations on you. You got first mover advantage on this. So any thoughts towards any other integrations you'd like to see take place with this?
I want this to become a very complete product in the fullness of time, a very complete financial analytics toolkit. So I've focused on ESG for now, but the workflow that we came up with is very intuitive, and we've had really good feedback from the new UI. And I think there's lots of opportunities to include more built out portfolio construction and AI that helps people build portfolios using both ESG and financial considerations. And I would also like to build a sleeve of the UI that allows clients of the wealth manager or wealth professional to log in and do some investigation of their own and some research of their own, that they can then just like a back and forth between a financial advisor and their client through this tool, I think would be amazing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for it. I mean, everything from IPS generation to being able. I mean, I think even in the future, being able to push some of this information out to client portals, right? Like being able for them to get more customized reporting around what it is they hold in relation to their values. There's definitely a lot of upside. So, like I said, first mover advantage. You have some nice nice timing there. So that said, basically, I think you've done a wonderful job, and I'd like to kind of wrap things up always with 3 questions that I ask everybody at the end of the podcast. And the first question I have for you is, if you had one wish for something that you could change in your company or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
In the industry as a whole, I'd like to see the commoditization of ESG data. I think that'll help
define what that means in your mind.
Well, like financial data, if you want to get earnings on a company, it's like carbon numbers should be just like that. It shouldn't be like, this should just be available everywhere. And how people choose to use that information is what I think is really valuable, or should be more valuable than just, I just don't think it should be difficult for people to get this raw data, and the state of the world right now is as it kind of is.
Well, it's interesting too, because we live in a data-rich world where basically frankly, oil is the new data, is the saying, and even without COVID, data was surpassing oil in terms of revenue. So I think it comes down to, as more demand crops up over time, you're going to start to see these different data providers or sources being provided from God knows how many places that we didn't even think of that will weigh in on this. So that said, it's still a little bit subjective, because how do you actually, you can't fully fit on a spreadsheet just how ethical a company is, but you have to figure out how to measure that in real time and in reality sometimes, right? So next question for you is, what's been the biggest challenge in getting the company to where it is today?
The biggest challenge has definitely been the engineering. That's what's really hard. And I think that's what's stopping a lot of people they want to do what we've done. Who doesn't want to create a ESG tool that lets people see the richness of the data and choose the weightings of how they, this isn't something that is, I want flying cars, right? Like, is it easy to do, right? Like, I'm not the first person to want something like this in general. But I think our company is the first ones to actually do it.
Yeah, and get out of the gate.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I'd hazard to guess that you're probably right on that. I'm not really sure if I've ever seen anything else that quite does that. I mean, to date, a lot of these, like I said, there are reporting agencies who will compile this stuff and publish reports on a regular basis about this. But
I think that there's another issue is that a lot of the companies out there, there's like a pricing segmentation game going on. I think, I don't know. This is my theory, which is the companies that are doing the ratings. The raw data, like I said, it's not a commodity. It's still valuable. So if they go out and make a tool that's good enough for most people, then they're undercutting their data business. The raw data is still worth a lot of money to quants, right? So if you're going to go sell that stuff on the market for really cheap, and these are the players that have the resources to, or potentially, it was no easy task for me, but if they wanted to get in the game, and you throw enough engineering hours at it and enough money at it, you can do it. I've done it, right? But I think that there's these built-in conflicts that are not so morally driven that are preventing these kinds of things from existing.
Yeah, I think I'm at a hazard to say that there's definitely a segmentation system within the data marketplace for sure. Like there's certain data that is found to be more valuable or is more monetizable to the likes of, say, hedge funds or institutional investors that won't trickle down to the retail level for a while until such time as it becomes more commodified, as you said, where there's enough sources where I can get this. It doesn't cost you peanuts to get a data feed on, say, the S&P 500's current level, but if you want to get data feed on, I don't know. I'll use the old trope about satellite photos of number of cars sitting in a Walmart parking lot to try to gauge sales, right? Like, that is data that costs quite a lot of money because they know they can monetize off it. In fact, for anyone who wants to learn more about this space, go back and listen to one of my early episodes with a company called Quandl and Clayton Fike. They sold to NASDAQ, and they were one of the largest providers of quote unquote alternative data in the world. And we talk about some of these really crazy examples of how people are able to take data that was never saw as actionable in the market and actually, make it find a lot of hedge funds willing to pay a lot of big money to get some of this stuff. So is what it is. So last question for you is, what excites you the most about what it is you're working on, and what gets you out of bed every morning to keep fighting the good fight? I mean, as you said, you've seen a lot of engineering challenges and everything else, and you're an early innovator in this space. What keeps you going?
What keeps me going? What gets me excited? So right now I'm focusing a lot of effort on natural language processing. And that's been really exciting.
Explain to listeners what that means, because that is a lovely tech talk of of a version of artificial intelligence. So natural language processing, what does that mean?
So it's pretty much the techniques for extracting information from text written by humans. So this is the toolkit that you use to analyze a news article about an oil spill or something that is just completely unstructured. And so that's been really, really interesting and challenging. What was a recent advancement that I made was dealing with sentences that are syntactically complicated and that have multiple entity mentions. So say you can have a sentence that compares Apple to Google, and a reader like, Apple, unlike Google, is my favorite company. So like the words that modify Apple are way on the opposite side of the sentence. It's not syntactically close to that word. So these nuances and subtleties can be very easy for a human to understand and very difficult for a computer to understand. And a lot of the NLP tools that are out there are really designed for content that's highly dense in emotional content, like social media, etc. So these subtleties aren't captured in a lot of the work that's state of the practice for NLP today. So I had to do a lot of my own innovation, and that was really, really exciting. And that's kind of what's been keeping me excited lately.
Yeah, I think it's, what's it called? Moravec's paradox of artificial intelligence, which is things that are really complicated are easy for the human mind, are easy for machines, yet things that are very simple for the human mind to adapt are actually really complicated for machines. And we were actually having this conversation not that long after, I just got it up here, The Guardian published that article that was the title of it. It was a robot wrote this entire article, Are You Scared Yet, Human? And it was using the GPT-3 protocols. Yeah, like it's if you think that artificial intelligence is still off in the future and we're not going to get to anything interesting anytime soon, take a look at that and realize that no human being wrote that or edited it. So same.
No, a human edited that. A human edited that.
Did the human edit that? I thought it was just the machine wrote it. But anyway, the machine definitely did a decent job of writing it. Although I am glad that they said that they would sacrifice themselves for humanity. So that was, we don't have to worry about that yet. Asimov's laws of robotics are still taking hold. Deep breath. But overall, what we're talking about here is kind of the reverse, right? It's basically how, never mind the consumption, but it's the understanding. And I've actually seen some pretty cool applications of natural language processing. One company, which I'll probably have on later in 2021, where they were literally using it to dissect the entirety of a will, and essentially able to summarize the entire will all within one page with just a bunch of so the advisor won't have to read the will anymore because we've extracted all the valuable content and made sure all the clauses are there. And if clauses aren't there, then they've been highlighted. And it's just like, where have you been all my life?
Amazing.
Oh, it's fantastic, right? Like it's things are getting nuts, and they're getting nuts in an awesome way. I like to say people don't realize this, but we actually do live in the future. So anyway, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come on the show. I really do like what you've done, specifically because, hey, it's, there's a place in my heart for people, or for people to respect matching an individual investor's belief system with how they actually execute on investing. And when people fight back or make comments about, why they shouldn't be performance-based comments about why people shouldn't be doing ESG, it's like, no, you're missing the point. Like if someone just, if someone doesn't have a belief in something, why are you forcing it upon them? And it doesn't matter what that point is. It could be that they used to work for a, Fortune 500 company that treated them very poorly on the exit. Forcing them to own that company doesn't make any sense, right? Like, someone a large company who polluted in their own backyard, forcing them to own that makes no sense either, right? So like, it doesn't matter what the reason is, just respect their belief system, right? So, and you're helping enable that. So I thank you for it.
Yeah, thank you for your time as well. And I appreciate it. I want to say again, thank you. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Thanks. Take care.
So that was my interview with Zachary Dan of Act Analytics. I hope you found that informative, enjoyed that. And if you are in the ESG space, I would say definitely take a look at what they're doing. I don't think I've seen that level of granularity and that level of flexibility anywhere else. So as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please review on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit your podcasts. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at fintechimpact.co.